Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with France-based jazz pianist, composer, and educator Jim Funnell. We had a long talk on the eve of 2022 about his latest CD, Live in Japan, and his long, well-traveled life in music. He started leading his own band in his early teens, performing at jazz clubs by the time he was in high school. He would move on to the Berklee College of Music, swimming in a diversity of styles and cultures. He has traveled around the globe and lived in France, England, and the United States. He is full of stories and wisdom and joy. Thanks again for reaching out, sending the music over. I appreciate it.
Sure, my pleasure, and thank you for having me on Neon Jazz. That's cool.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah.
So, are you in Paris proper?
No, actually, I'm outside in the countryside here. Really, I'm an hour away north of Paris.
Okay.
In it's called the Oise department, and it's pretty chill out here.
Right on, man. Right on. Yeah.
Vegetable growing in my garden and stuff,
The only time that I've ever been in Paris was around 9/11. I landed on September 4th, 2001, and and had to navigate my way. I was backpacking through Europe, but my flight was going to leave Paris, and it was going to be a one-way back to Kansas City, but after 9/11, the entire flight didn't exist anymore.
Oh man, so you were stranded here for a bit.
Well, when I found out about it, I was in Cinque Terre, the poor man's Riviera in Italy. I was in a little place called Vernazza, and I had just been in Venice when I found out about it. So I had to kind of navigate my way to London, and I finally flew out of Gatwick. So
okay,
yeah,
wow, that's a crazy story.
Yeah, it was crazy, wild time. As crazy as that was, I don't know that it touches what we've been living through since March of 2020 on Earth.
I know, yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, I know. It's been really, something. That's why actually, all these events and everything that led me and my wife to move out of New York City, because we were living there for 4 years, and it was great. We both studied in the U.S. and different colleges, and then we met in Paris, and then we said, why don't we just go live in New York for some time, because that's where most jazz happens and stuff. So it was a great experience, but the world became so hectic, we decided let's just kind of go back and settle down in the countryside, and can do our stuff from here.
Good for you.
Everything's happening online now, and we have nice vegetable garden. It's cool.
Yeah,
I'm digging it.
Yeah, that's wonderful, man.
Yeah.
Thanks again for sending the music. And I think the thing that's so alluring to me of loving jazz and covering jazz is the Japanese culture reveres jazz in a way that's like very specialized. No one in the world looks at jazz the way they do. Mm-hmm. You have a Live in Japan CD. Talk to me about this project.
Right. Yeah, so, I used to visit Japan, once a year, basically. My wife is Japanese, right? So I'm going to talk about her a lot because she's a musician too, and we do most of our projects together. Although this one is more my thing, right? The trio that you're mentioning today. But she is featured on the album as well on one track, Ikigai, the Ikigai track. And so, we used to go to Japan to tour there once a year. We started that back in 2010 or 11. Yeah, so, and I had some friends at Berklee College of Music who were Japanese and, jazz musicians. And I don't know, I just hit it off with these people. So we kept in touch. And then, it so happens that every time, we toured Japan, and I hit them up and we were like, hey, do you want to do some gigs? So we booked a bunch of gigs and just had fun. And so this happened in 2016. Again, and we just set a Zoom recorder in two of the venues, and turned out all right. So I thought, well, why don't I release it now? Because since the pandemic hit and everything, I didn't really have any live things going on. So I thought it's a good time to just release some music that has been recorded in the past. And so I got it mastered, and there it is. Basically.
That's great. So what are you hoping the listener gets from this? I mean, the one thing that's unique about this during this time, I think, is the fact that releasing live albums is kind of a sight for sore eyes, so to speak, because we've missed it for so long. Is there a special meaning behind the release of this, being live?
Special meaning behind the release of this? I mean, it's special to me because, I hope it's going to be special to the listeners too, obviously, because, we always want to share the music with people. It's not something you do just for one's own pleasure, although it does have a spiritual dimension as well. I guess you could connect in that way. But I mean, It's special because I released 2 albums, studio albums before with the Word Out project. This new album kind of revisits those live studio albums because there are tracks from both of them, right, that we played live. And as you said, the Japanese audience was really into it, and it was lovely to play for them. And I guess you could feel that energy in the recording, and it was really inspiring for me to share and for the group to share this music with the audience over there. And I think it shows through the recording. So, I hope I can give a taste of that to listeners around the world who will hear this live recording. I guess it's and also that the jazz club scene in Japan is really cool because they have all these really small jazz clubs. So, we end up playing in front of maybe 10, 15 people each gig, but it's really intimate and nice. Yeah, I hope people who listen to this CD can, I hope we can convey that atmosphere of coziness, intimacy, and share the music in that way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it sure does. And I guess the elephant in the room with the world right now is COVID. What have you learned about yourself during this COVID time where there's been less gigs and more confinement that maybe you didn't realize about yourself that's going to make you stronger as you promote this album and the world wakes up a little bit more as we go forward into 2022?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I mean, actually, it's been a very deep journey since this whole COVID thing hit. Yeah, and it's, I guess, a great time to reflect and to really figure out what's important in one's life, because I guess the priorities shift a lot because, my wife and I got scared because we got COVID in New York back in 2020 in March when it was really the peak of the pandemic. I mean, I don't really follow the numbers and all that, but I know everyone was sick pretty much around me, and we got to stay home and we were sick for a few months. Yeah, we didn't go to hospital, but, some days I was like, okay, I don't know if I'm going to, felt so bad that I thought, am I going to make it, next morning or whatever? But it turns out it was okay. But we really, I really thought, my health is really important here. And it was a very stressful environment in New York City. I've always lived in cities, in Paris and New York. And I thought I got to chill out and kind of do some exercise, take care of myself. What's really important is to be healthy. And that's obviously a prerequisite to be able to share the music. If I'm sick or whatever, it's much more difficult. So that was the first thing. It's been so deep. I don't know even where to start with this because it's been such a crazy journey. But mostly kind of reflect on what the priorities are in my life. And, I cut a lot of the extra stuff that I was doing, just really go back to the basics of making music, expressing whatever music comes through, and trying to focus on releasing that and just composing more. Because in the end, the important thing is to share music with other musicians and audiences, and that's what I want to do more of from now. And I guess it starts with this very album that was released in 2021.
So let's go back to the beginnings of your life. Where were you born and raised?
So I was born in France, actually, in a small suburb of Paris. And I was raised there. Then my parents moved to England. I'm half British and half French. So I lived in Bedford, close to London, for 3 years. So I was a toddler at that point. And then they moved back to France. So I grew up mostly in France. And I went to middle school and high school there. Studied piano, jazz piano, and classical piano. And and then my jazz teacher said he recommended, Berklee College of Music. So I applied, got a scholarship there, and I left in my 20s. And then I lived in Boston for 3 years, came back to Paris, and then moved to New York. And then now I'm back, So that's pretty much, my life.
That's the timeline. Yeah. So, but you were performing in clubs by the time you were in high school. So were you destined to be a musician? Was that your sole dream in your life?
Yeah, I think I really was. I remember when I was like 5 years old and I was listening to, at the time it was like David Bowie and Lionel Richie, Michael Jackson. And that was my CDs, but then my dad had like Jimi Hendrix and, stuff like that going on. And I loved it. I always loved music and I thought, that's what I want to do. So, yeah.
What about jazz musicians? Who were you really into when you started getting into jazz? Who inspired you?
The jazz came in slightly later. So, I was studying, piano with a local teacher in the suburbs of Paris. And she told me, she noticed that I never kind of really do the exercises that she wanted me to do but I would go to the piano and play. So she thought, okay, maybe you should play jazz because apparently you like improvising a lot. So then she geared me towards this local jazz teacher. And with him, so it was fun. Like, okay, so at the time he didn't take any really young musicians, but I guess I was 10 or 11, and he didn't have anyone that young in his class. So it was kind of testing me. Like, okay, so what can you do? So I played sort of a blues, and I think that he liked that. But then he asked me, so who do you like? And I was like, well, Elton John. And he's like, what, what the heck? Like, but then he said, okay, listen to Ahmad Jamal and Keith Jarrett. And when I listened to that, it just kind of, blew my mind, I was like, so they've been my favorite ever since, really. And I've got literally all of Ahmad's CDs and Keith as well. Yeah, these were really inspiring. And then, of course, I got into Miles Davis and Coltrane and all the others. But the Ahmad Jamal and Keith Jarrett and Bill Evans also, to a certain extent, I think they were really influential for me, yeah.
So what was the first live jazz show you saw that really blew you away?
Oh, well, I think I saw the Ahmad Jamal show at the Olympia in Paris. Maybe it's not the first one, to be truly honest, but the first one I can really remember, that was also as a teenager, promoting what album was that? Maybe it was the time where he was releasing The Essence Part 1, 2, and 3 or something. I don't know which one exactly, but yeah.
So at Berklee, you got to be around some pretty heavy hitters. I mean, Danilo Perez and, Joe Lovano, George Garzone. That had to be a huge period of growth for you. Yeah,
it was great. Yeah, it was really, really fun. Both studying with them and also performing with some greats in some instances too, because, they had these visiting artists at Berklee, and they got to organize like student concerts. I mean, they'd invite a guest artist and who would play with them. So I got to meet Marcus Miller and Michelle Ndegio cello, and she was great too. She was really grooving. It was so fun. I was almost afraid to play anything on the piano because I thought, man, this is just going to kill the groove in the band, Just listening was great. And so that was, as you say, a huge period of growth. Yeah, I studied with Danilo as well. He gave me enough material I only took 6 lessons with him, I think, because you're only allowed to take a few because he's so popular over there. But he gave me enough material that, for me to practice my whole life, basically. So I'm still thinking about some of the things he said and showed me. And what else? Lots of great teachers, and some of them are not, not that famous, but I learned a lot from them as well, and also from the student, the very diverse student body that was at Berklee at the time, because I was around all these different cultures. And for me, France is pretty multicultural in the suburbs, but that was another level because, all these people from all over the world, everyone's interested in music. It was so energizing and kind of, really nice, a great experience.
Well, and I guess that's kind of the theme of your life. You've moved around quite a bit and even traveled quite a bit. I mean, you've been to Mexico, Argentina, Uruguay, Brazil. This has to be pretty rough to have the world locked down. Are you chomping to kind of get back out to see things when things kind of ease up?
Yeah, I don't know how things are going to turn out, right? Honestly, in the short term, I don't want to be pessimistic, but I don't have that great an outlook on how things are going to evolve. On the longer term, it's probably going to get better, right? But for now, I have to, I'm looking into, I don't like the way, I don't want to get too political or whatever, but the restrictions in France and in Europe in general are pretty intense. And I don't really like that because, as a jazz musician, I'm more of a freedom lover than someone who likes to be told what to do and when and where and all that all the time. So I'm looking into, I don't know, we might move out to some, I don't know, Turkey or some place at some point. Let's see how things evolve here. But the touring has become more difficult, obviously, and but that's okay. We're focusing more on making videos, writing new music. Thankfully, we can still record. So I'll probably hit the studio next year to do something new. Still keeping the project alive and doing a lot of online collaborations, but I think a lot of musicians are turning to that at this point. It seems like the natural thing to do, but also giving concerts at my place, because we're lucky to be living in it's an old pigeon tower actually, so from the 18th century, I think. So it's really kind of an original, sort of unique dwelling place here. On the first floor, we have this space, so we can do shows there, and all the gear's there. We had a few people around to do the hybrid live stream / live concert here, so that was fun.
Speaking of the hopeful optimism of live shows coming back, and when that kind of does happen, what do you hope we all realize about this absence of live music? I mean, it's been a pretty big jolt. I mean, athletes have gone back and other areas have, but it seems like the arts have been continually held back. Mm-hmm. But when things do open up, what do you hope people out there realize about live performance?
Yeah, that's a great question. I hope that they realize that music is it's almost like a divine thing. For me, it's like, the world is like music, other people have this view. I think, like, if you talk to, I've never talked to Wayne Shorter, but I'm sure the way he talks about the universe and, the planets and everything, everything's in harmony and everything works like, in vibrations and waves. I've studied a lot of Sufism, and I love that. It's the way they see the universe and how the celestial bodies evolve in space. And music is very much like that. And I kind of hope that people realize the connection between the two, and how, bringing about harmony in music is very similar to bringing about harmony in the world. There's this Indian guru, master teacher, who played the veena, which is an Indian instrument. And he wrote this book called The Mysticism of Sound and Music. And he talks about that a lot, and I tend to agree. He ended up, I think, letting go of the veena altogether. He reached a level of mastery, but he said, now I'm going to try and harmonize souls instead of harmonizing notes together. And I thought, wow, that's really deep stuff. And I hope, my ambition is never to do that. I'm just going to stick with music, but I hope we go towards that path collectively as human beings, realizing that, bringing out about more harmony in the world in that way. Yeah. If live shows can contribute to that, it'd be cool.
So why do you love jazz?
Oh, it's for the freedom, the freedom of expression that we can find in playing jazz, because it's really, improvisation is life for me. I just want to express the emotions and everything through the music. It's a great medium for me and for a lot of musicians to do that. I hope this continues as well for a long time, because it's nice to make very produced albums and stuff, but I like the raw kind of feeling that you get when you just improvise. Some of the tracks on one of my studio albums, Spirit of the Snail, they're completely improvised. The ones where I invited a harpist to join us, and I thought some cool stuff happened there, and it's nice to be able to express, yourself in the moment that way, and just have fun with the sounds that you can make, and sort of paint the air with those musical brushes or whatever.
I like that imagery. That's wonderful. Everyone has a perception of you, an idea of who they think you are, your family, your friends, your fans, your students, but ultimately you live your life. What's your perception of yourself? Who do you think you are?
That's the thing. It's Ben, you got really great questions, I got to tell you.
Thank you.
So, who do I think I am, man? That's the thing. I try, from all these spiritual writings that I've been studying, Taoism and Sufism and a lot of other things, I try to detach myself from what I think. Because when you think about yourself, you think, okay, I'm my body, or I'm my mind, or I'm my thoughts, or whatever you think you might be, but really we're not any of that. And I think the higher self dwells at some higher level, or anyway in a different realm. So that's who we really are, and having access to that is actually not that easy. So it's hard to answer that question really, because the spirit that inhabits me, I'm still trying to get to know it better. Really, that's the process I'm going through, especially since COVID hit, like we were talking about before. So, let's see what I discover. And I think if you tune in and listen to my next albums, we'll probably learn more about that in the future. Hopefully, as I evolve, if all goes well.
Jim, hey, thanks again, man, for reaching out. Thank you for the music. I appreciate your time today.
You're very welcome. And thank you, Joe, for this interview. It was a pleasure to be
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players and thinkers in France, England, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Jim for his time, music, and story. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.